She got uninvited to her boyfriend's cousin's wedding, then suddenly invited back. Now she's done. Imagine finding out you were not invited to a wedding where your boyfriend is literally standing at the altar as a groomsman. 6 years together. A home you own jointly. A cousin you have hung out with more times than you can count. And somehow there is no room for you. That is not a seating chart problem. That is a message. And the worst part is not even the original snub. The worst part is what comes after. Because what comes after is somehow so much worse. She and her boyfriend had been together for 6 years at this point. Not 6 months. Not some brand new situationship where you can argue the invite either way. 6 years of building a life together, owning a home together, showing up to family events together. 6 years of learning each other's families, of knowing which uncle tells the same 3 stories at every gathering, of showing up to birthdays and holidays and the quieter moments that nobody posts about but that actually make up the fabric of a shared life. By almost any reasonable standard, she is not some +1 you have to squeeze in as a favor. She is practically family herself. Her name should have been on that list without a second thought. So when the invitation arrived and only his name was on it, both of them were thrown off. They sat with it for a moment, probably turned the envelope over, checked the names again. They figured it had to be a mistake. A clerical oversight. Maybe someone forgot to add her name when they were filling out the envelopes, or maybe the invitation list got cut off before it was complete. These things happen, and assuming the worst about family rarely feels good, so they gave the benefit of the doubt. They did the reasonable thing. They reached out and asked. And the answer they got back was not an apology for an oversight. It was a deliberate confirmation. There is not enough room for her. Just him. That was the actual response. No softening. No expression of regret. No, we are so sorry, we had to make some really hard calls. Just a matter of fact no that landed like a door closing in her face. After 6 years, after showing up consistently and without complaint, after presumably sitting at family dinners and holiday gatherings and all the quiet in-between moments that accumulate into something that feels like belonging, the cousin looked at the situation and decided she did not make the cut. That stings in a way that is hard to explain if you have never had it happen to you. It is not just about a party. It is not about the food or the dancing or the open bar. It is about what the exclusion communicates on a level that goes much deeper than logistics. It says, she is not one of us yet. It says her presence is not something we thought to make room for. It says, after all this time, she is still optional. And that particular message, delivered without apology, has a way of echoing long after the moment has passed. She handled it well though. She let herself feel sad for a moment, sat with the sting of it, acknowledged that it hurt in the private way that quiet rejections always hurt, and then made the genuinely mature decision to not take it personally and move on. That is actually harder than it sounds. When something feels like a rejection, the natural instinct is to either spiral into overthinking it, replaying every family gathering and searching for signs you were never really welcome, or to let it quietly poison how you feel about the people involved. The bitterness can creep in without you even noticing it, changing the way you talk about those people, changing the way you feel walking into the next family event, making everything a little bit heavier than it used to be. She did neither. She sat with the hurt, acknowledged it honestly, and then made the decision to set it down. She accepted it as the situation, made her own plans for that day, picked something she actually wanted to do, something that felt like a treat rather than a consolation prize, and decided she was going to have a good time anyway. That takes a real level of emotional self-awareness and grace, the kind that most people would struggle to find in that moment. Okay, but I am sorry. She is too mature. I would have been stewing about this for weeks. So she moved on. Plans were made. She booked something for herself, carved out a day that was entirely hers, and mentally closed the chapter on the wedding. She was not carrying anger into it. She was not plotting anything. She had done the work of releasing it and was genuinely ready to move forward. And then, as these things tend to go, the situation shifted. A bunch of guests apparently backed out of the wedding. Maybe it was a scheduling conflict, maybe people had travel issues, maybe the RSVPs just did not hold the way the couple had hoped. Whatever the reason, suddenly there is room. Suddenly the guest list has space that did not exist before, space that somehow could not be found for a woman who has shared a home and a life with a core member of the wedding party for 6 years. And suddenly she is getting an invitation that was not there originally, dropped into her lap with what one imagines was very little acknowledgement of how strange and uncomfortable this moment actually is. There was no preamble. No honest conversation about how the situation had changed and how they understood if she had already made other plans. Just the invitation, extended as if the previous exchange had simply evaporated. She is the backup plan. She is the fill-in option that gets called up because the primary roster fell through. And they sent that invitation as if none of the previous conversation had ever happened, as if she had simply been waiting patiently for a spot to open up. This is the part where I have to stop and acknowledge what is actually being asked of her here. They are not just asking her to come to a wedding. They are asking her to rearrange her schedule on short notice, which anyone who has tried to coordinate time off knows is not a small thing. They are asking her to take time off work, which in most jobs requires advance notice and approval and sometimes affects other people around you who are counting on your presence. They are asking her to travel out of town, which means transportation costs, potentially accommodation, getting ready away from home, packing for an event you never planned to attend, and all the invisible friction that comes with last-minute travel. They are asking her to absorb all of those costs, logistical and emotional, and show up with warmth and celebration on her face. They are asking her to do all of that for a wedding she was explicitly told she was not wanted at, with a smile on her face, and presumably with enough warmth to make it look like the original exclusion never happened, never hurt, never meant anything at all. That is an enormous amount to ask. And it is being asked without any real acknowledgement that it is a lot. She is not being dramatic here. She is not being petty or holding a grudge for sport. The feelings she has are the completely natural result of being told no, sitting with that no long enough to actually process it, making alternative plans that required real decisions and possibly real money, emotionally moving on, and then being asked to drop all of that because other people cancelled. The emotional work she did to make peace with not going was real. It was not small. It is the kind of quiet internal labor that people rarely get credit for, the work of talking yourself into acceptance when something hurts, of choosing not to let resentment take root, of deciding that your peace is worth more than your grievance. And now that work is being undone and she is expected to just reset like it costs her nothing, like she is a switch that can be flipped back and forth depending on what is convenient for everyone else. There is something really important to understand about social invitations and what they communicate beyond the logistics. When someone invites you to a major life event, they are saying you matter to me. You are someone I want present when I mark this moment. When they explicitly tell you there is no room for you, they are saying you do not matter enough to make room. The guest list for a wedding is one of the most deliberate lists a person will ever make. Every seat at every table represents a choice. Someone sat down and thought about who deserved to be in that room, and she was not among them. When she was left off that list, that was a choice. And when she was added back only because other people said no, that was also a choice. Both of those choices say something about how her presence is valued. Neither of them says something flattering. I am also thinking about her boyfriend in all of this, because his position is genuinely complicated. He is standing in that wedding. This is his cousin, probably someone he grew up with, someone whose childhood is woven into his own, someone whose wedding he genuinely wants to celebrate. He cannot exactly decline to be a groomsman over this without it becoming a whole separate situation, without it straining a relationship that clearly matters to him on some level. So he is going to be at that wedding regardless, standing up front, part of the ceremony, visible and present and part of the day. And she would have to sit somewhere in the middle of the crowd, in a sea of people she may or may not even know, in a room where her welcome was always conditional, where she made it in only because someone else dropped out first. That is a strange and uncomfortable position to be in for an entire day. She would have to carry that awareness beneath the surface the whole time, smiling through moments that carry an undercurrent of something she never quite resolved. Let her take the day for herself. Let her do whatever she planned when she thought she was not going. Not because she owes the cousin a snub in return. Not because she is trying to make a point or send a message or start something that will ripple through family gatherings for years. But because she already did the emotional work of building a day that worked for her, a day she was genuinely looking forward to, and nobody who treated her like an afterthought gets to undo that work on short notice just because the numbers finally worked out in her favor. There is also something worth saying about what declining communicates versus what people might assume it communicates. A lot of people in her position would worry that saying no will look like she is being vindictive or making it about herself, that it will get back to the cousin and become a whole thing at the next family gathering, that she will be painted as difficult or cold or unable to let things go. But declining with grace, without drama, without making it a big confrontation, simply saying thank you so much for the invitation but I have already made other plans, is not a statement of war. It is a statement of self-respect. It is the natural, quiet, entirely reasonable consequence of being made to feel like an option. There is nothing aggressive about it. You are not required to rearrange your life to accommodate people who did not think to include you until it became convenient for them. If she goes, she will spend the whole day managing how she feels about being the backup invite, working to keep that knowledge below the surface, smiling through the toasts and the dancing and the family photos, making it look fine when it is not entirely fine, and then she will come home having spent money and time and emotional energy on an event where her presence was considered optional right up until the moment it became convenient. If she does not go, she will spend the day doing something she actually chose, with her own plans, on her own terms, without owing anyone a performance of happiness she has not quite earned back yet. The cousin made a choice. She made peace with that choice. Now they want to change the terms and expect her to be available on demand, to treat the revised invitation as though it carries the same weight as one that came from genuine desire for her presence from the very beginning. She has every right to say no. She has every right to keep her plans. Not out of bitterness. Not out of spite. But because she is a person, not a placeholder. And honestly, if the cousin is upset about her declining, that is an interesting reaction coming from someone who decided she was not worth a seat in the first place. She is absolutely not the asshole here. Not even close. Declining this invitation is not rude. It is honest. And the only people who should feel any discomfort about this situation are the ones who created it. She did the math, paid her share, and still got called inconsiderate. So she's walking out for good. 9:11 p.m. Claude respondio. She sat down and did the actual math. She sat down and did the actual math. Not in a petty, I am going to win this argument kind of way. In a this does not add up and someone needs to say it out loud kind of way. And what she found when she ran the numbers was exactly what she already knew in her gut. She was paying equal rent for unequal space, equal responsibility for an unequal situation, and somehow still ending up as the inconsiderate one in the room. She had been living with her college friend Gabby and Gabby's boyfriend Tim for long enough that the cracks were not new. She is 29 years old, her own boyfriend does not even live with her, and she is sharing a condo with what is functionally a couple who have taken over the master bedroom and settled in as if the place is entirely theirs. Tim is 40 years old and essentially a permanent resident. He is not a guest. He is not someone who visits a few times a week. He lives there. He uses the space, the utilities, the shared areas, all of it, full-time. And yet the three of them split rent equally. His toiletries line the bathroom shelf. His shoes fill the entryway. His voice is the one you hear through the walls at 10 at night when you are just trying to decompress after a long day. He is as present in that apartment as anyone whose name is actually on the lease. Let me just sit with that for a second. She is paying the same amount as a man who is 12 years older than her, who lives there permanently with his girlfriend, while her own boyfriend visits occasionally. That is wild. She had managed all of this without complaint for a long time. She had kept the peace, navigated the unspoken rules, adjusted to the dynamic, and filed her grievances privately rather than turning the household into a battlefield. She had smiled through dinners that felt like she was the third wheel in her own home. She had learned which topics to avoid, which moods to read, which moments to make herself smaller so that the couple could expand into whatever space they needed. She had done all of that quietly and consistently because she valued the friendship, because she believed in being a decent person to live with, and because she genuinely thought the same energy was being extended back to her. She had her boyfriend over more often than usual for a 2-week stretch. Not every day. Not in a way that took over the apartment. 2 to 3 times per week instead of the usual 1 to 2. He slept over a handful of times, including once on short notice. He was considerate. He was not loud or demanding or invasive. He was just there, the way a partner occasionally is when 2 people are in a relationship and want to spend time together. And Gabby and Tim decided this was a burden. They said it put pressure on shared resources and space. They said her boyfriend's presence was the problem. They sat down and they made that complaint to her face. They chose to have that conversation with the seriousness of a formal meeting, as if they had been drafting their grievances for days and finally worked up the courage to deliver them together as a united front. Now here is where it gets genuinely infuriating. Because while they were delivering this complaint about her boyfriend's visits, Gabby's own siblings had slept over last minute 4 to 5 times. Not once. 4 to 5 times. These were not planned occasions with advance notice and coordinated scheduling. They were last minute. Short notice. The kind of guest arrival that gives you no time to prepare or adjust. And she had never said a single word about it. Not a comment, not a raised eyebrow, not a quiet conversation about shared space. She just let it happen because that is what you do when you live with people you respect and trust. You extend grace. You do not count every overnight guest and report back to management. But apparently that grace only flows in one direction in this apartment. The hypocrisy of the situation is staggering when you lay it all out at once, and she clearly had the clarity of mind to see it fully by the time she started planning her exit. Tim is not a guest who occasionally sleeps over. He is a 40-year-old man who lives there permanently in the master bedroom with his girlfriend. The condo is functionally a 3.5-person household on their side. Her boyfriend visits. He does not live there. He does not have a key, he does not have storage space, he does not have a presence in the apartment when she is not there. The idea that his visits are the problem while Tim's permanent residency is completely fine is not a logic that holds up under even the lightest scrutiny. And yet they delivered that complaint with complete confidence, as if they had no awareness of the contradiction sitting right in front of them. And then there are the unspoken rules. Every shared living situation has them to some degree. Little preferences about how the kitchen gets cleaned or how guests are supposed to behave or how the common areas should look. But she specifically noted that Gabby has particular feelings about who comes over and how the place looks aesthetically, and that these unspoken rules somehow apply specifically to her. Not to Tim's permanent presence. Not to Gabby's siblings sleeping over on short notice multiple times. Just to her. She is the one being held to the standard that everyone else gets to ignore. She is the one expected to check in and give advance notice and manage the comfort of people who extend no such management toward her own comfort. She also mentioned the rent situation in a way that deserves more attention than a quick mention. She did the math based on the actual floor plan. The master bedroom is significantly larger. It is not a marginal difference, the kind you could wave away and say, well, it is close enough so we will just split it evenly for the sake of simplicity. It is a real difference in square footage, in closet space, in the quality of daily life inside that apartment. And yet they all pay the same. She has been subsidizing their extra space this entire time, quietly, without making it an argument, because she was trying to be a good roommate and keep things civil. Every single month she handed over money that was, by any fair calculation, slightly more than her share. And she did it without complaint. Without a spreadsheet sent via passive-aggressive text. Without a single pointed comment over dinner. She just paid it, absorbed the inequity, and kept going. The fact that they repaid that quiet generosity by turning around and complaining about her boyfriend visiting slightly more often for 2 weeks is genuinely hard to stomach. On top of all of that, she spent months chasing them for post-dated rent checks. From October 2025 through February 2026, she was the one following up, sending reminders, doing the administrative labor of making sure the bills got paid on time. Picture what that actually looks like. Drafting the same polite reminder message again and again. Watching the deadline approach and feeling that low hum of anxiety that comes from knowing you are responsible for something you cannot fully control. Wondering each time whether this will be the month it becomes a real problem. She was patient through that too. She did not blow it up. She did not threaten to leave or report anything. She just kept following up, kept the process moving, and kept the household functional because someone had to. And the consequence of their repeated lateness is that the lease tail end is now their obligation. Not because she was strategic about it. Because that is how it played out when you consistently fail to meet your responsibilities on time. So let us be clear about who she is. She is someone who paid equal rent for less space without complaint. She is someone who chased rent checks for months without blowing up the living situation. She is someone who never commented on last-minute overnight guests from Gabby's family even though the same grace was not extended to her. She is someone who has been accommodating and fair and quiet about her own discomfort for a very long time. And she is being called the inconsiderate one. She is not the asshole. Not even remotely. Paying 2 months of courtesy rent after she leaves is more than fair given the circumstances. Most people in her position would have had this conversation months ago, and some would have left without that courtesy at all. The fact that she is still thinking about the financial impact on them after everything they have put her through is a reflection of who she is, not a reflection of what they deserve. As for going no contact, I think she has earned that decision completely. The friendship with Gabby has clearly calcified into something that only works when she is absorbing the weight and keeping her frustrations to herself. That is not a friendship. That is a dynamic where one person does the emotional labor and the other person benefits from it without ever really acknowledging it. Walking away from that is not dramatic. It is self-preserving. She asked for advice on what to say if confronted. My honest advice is to say very little. Keep it simple, keep it factual, and do not get drawn into a long emotional debate about whether her choices were fair. She does not owe them an argument. She does not owe them a full inventory of grievances. She can say she has decided to move on, that she wishes them well, and that 2 months of rent is what she is providing as a courtesy. Beyond that, she owes them nothing. She has already given more than enough. Drop a comment below telling me which story hit harder for you. I am genuinely curious. And if you made it this far, a like and subscribe would mean the world.